White coat syndrome is when someone without hypertension shows a high blood pressure reading when they go to the doctors, when in actual fact they don't have high blood pressure when they're in a familiar or normal setting, such as at home or at work. Now, this poses a problem for the doctor because they can only go by the numbers that they see in the doctor's office. And if you're nervous every time you go there and your blood pressure's high, they're the numbers that they're going to see. Now, I just did a video about white coat syndrome, and for most of you, the techniques in there work really well in stopping you from being quite so nervous while at the doctor's office. However, there's a small proportion of people for whom these techniques may not work, and that's because we have to delve a little deeper into your thinking. So that's what this video is going to be about today. Hello, my name is Claire and welcome to Generation Calm, where you can learn to reduce your stress and anxiety naturally in your own time so that your mind and body feel great. I would love to be able to wave a magic wand and help you reduce your blood pressure when you're at the doctor's. But you, like everybody else, is a complex human being with a rich and varied history. This means that somewhere in your past you may have made a connection between a doctor's office and something to be fearful of. Let me explain. Here's Tracy. She had a bad experience at a doctor's office about 3 years ago. She was having a stressful time. She was going through a divorce. She had a toddler at home. She was going through a stressful time at work as well. She had a panic attack while waiting at the doctor's in the waiting room. During a doctor's appointment, she couldn't wait to get out of there. And of course, when they took her blood pressure, it was sky high. And now, 3 years later, she still gets nervous when she's going to the doctor. She thinks about it for days beforehand, and she's particularly worried about getting a panic attack again in public. And so, of course, when she gets there at the doctor's, the nurse takes her blood pressure and it's high every time because she's nervous. She's learned to associate going to the doctor's with a fearful experience because panic attacks are really awful. And she doesn't want that to happen again, but she's made that association now between the doctors and feeling awful and something to be fearful of. Now, let me show you another example. Here's Simon. He's in his 40s and he has no problem going to doctor's appointments with other people if it's another person's doctor's appointment. So he can quite happily take his son to see the paediatrician and he doesn't get anxious at all. So he's not made an association between the doctor's office and being scared. But as soon as the appointments are for him, he starts to worry, he starts to get anxious and his blood pressure goes up. And so when the nurse takes his blood pressure, it's high again. This is an indication that he's worried about his health. He's actually worried. He's thinking in the future, what does this appointment mean? And so that's causing him to get nervous and that's causing his blood pressure to rise. Now, if you recognize yourself in either of these people, either Tracy or Simon, then the breathing techniques alone are not going to work. Now, in the case of Tracy, she's kind of formed almost a type of phobia response, in which case, let's look at it from the point of view of how you would treat a phobia. In order to overcome this type of white coat syndrome, we would start to look at, in CBT, at encouraging Tracy to hang out at a doctor's office more often. Now, you might find this a little strange, but in order to overcome a fear, you have to face it. And not just face it once, but face it over and over again until you get to the point where your anxiety comes up, but it also comes down. And that happens naturally over time. In this case, Tracy's scared of going to the doctor's office, so she's going to hang out little by little, a little bit at a time, in places that remind her of her doctor's office. And she'll wait in the waiting room, or, if you speak to the doctor's office, they will probably be more than willing to allow you to kind of hang out in their waiting area or wherever it is. Over time, Tracy will find that she no longer gets this fear response, or if she does, it's over really quickly, so that when she does go to the doctors and has her blood pressure checked, it won't be as high anymore because she's overcome that fear response of going to the doctors. Now for Simon, of course, it's not a fear response, it's not any kind of phobia. He's not scared of going to a hospital or a doctor's, he's only scared when it's an appointment for him. So treating it like a phobia isn't going to be as helpful. In this case, we need to examine Simon's thoughts. What are the thoughts that are popping into Simon's head when he has to visit the doctors? What's on his mind when he's sitting in the waiting room? What's on his mind when he's first made the appointment to go? What's on his mind when he has a reading of high blood pressure at the doctor's? These thoughts will give a clue as to why Simon's blood pressure is spiking while he's at the doctor's. Now, of course, everybody's different and their thoughts are going to be different. Your experiences in life are different. But it's very likely that you're going to be scared and it's something to do with your health and your future. Very likely is a catastrophic thought that, what if I'm going to be told I have cancer? How am I going to be there for my family? And you start projecting yourself into the future and you start worrying about these thoughts that are popping into your head. In both of these scenarios, the blood pressure spikes because the thoughts make you nervous, and being nervous increases your blood pressure. Now, in Tracy's case, she's worried she's going to get another panic attack. And in Simon's case, he's worried about his future health and what that might mean. And he's probably thinking, oh, this is going to mean an impending death, and how are the family going to cope? Now, you can't become fearless. You can't stop thoughts. But you can manage how you respond to your thoughts so that it doesn't stop you from doing things, and so that it doesn't make your blood pressure spike when you go to the doctors. Doctors' offices are neither good or bad places. The key is to figure out what thoughts you're having about doctors' offices. So here are some examples of thoughts you might be having. The doctor's going to give me bad news. I haven't been to the doctors in a long time. They're going to be annoyed I didn't take the last medicine they prescribed me. He's going to say I have cancer. The last time I came here, they sent me straight to hospital. What if I have a panic attack again? If my blood pressure is high, they're going to give me medication for the rest of my life. So do you see that no matter how much you use breathing exercises to bring down your blood pressure, as soon as you have that thought, your blood pressure is going to go right back up again. And it happens instantaneously. As soon as you have that thought, your blood pressure's up again. So you're fighting a losing battle with using breathing techniques, because it will work, but then you have the thought again. Now remember, the majority of your thoughts, they're just thoughts. They're not real, they're not factual, they're opinions, they're thoughts. You don't know for sure that the test results are going to prove that you have cancer. It's not a fact that you're going to have a panic attack again. But once that thought has gone into your mind, then your body responds as if that is a fact. So my first suggestion is to start noticing your thoughts. Merely noticing them is enough sometimes. Now, Thich Nhat Hanh, the Buddhist monk and author, calls it radio non-stop thinking, radio NST. And that's because we all do it. We've all got these thoughts running around in our heads. Sometimes they're nurturing thoughts, sometimes they're critical thoughts, and sometimes they're just downright negative. But it's always best to write them down, so you get them out of your head, onto paper, and somehow they seem less threatening that way. Now, you're not going to be able to remove negative thoughts, so you can just stop battling them right now. But you can learn how to respond to them in a different way. And writing them down will be the first step for that. Now, tip number 2 is that being stressed in your everyday life is going to cause you to have more negative thoughts. You'll see things in less than rosy glasses. So try to pay attention to your stress levels and do what you can to keep them down. That means sleeping well, eating well, moving your body, have more breaks, get outside more. All the things that you know is sensible and will help reduce your stress in your day-to-day life. Number 3, talk to your doctor or anyone else that you trust about your fears. Getting it out in the open makes everything so much better. It's a relief to talk about these things. Most of the time we don't talk about it because we're embarrassed. We're scared to share these things. Well, don't be. It's time to tell someone about it. Being open helps to relieve the stress you're feeling inside. Tip number 4, you're not going to like this, but spend more time in clinical places. Hang out at waiting rooms, even random ones. Just hang out there. Take your time. Get to realise, it's different. It's different to our everyday life. Unless you're a doctor or a nurse and you spend time in a clinical setting on a regular basis, it's just not that natural for us. The sounds are different, the smells are different. So just, if you can, hang out in clinical places. And then lastly, talk to your doctor about white coat syndrome. I don't know if you've already spoken to them about it yet or not, but talking about it and bringing it out into the open will open up that conversation with them. And hopefully it will lead to you having 24-hour blood pressure monitoring, because that's really the only surefire way to figure the real results out. And I'm just going to end this with a little story about myself, because over the summer I was getting a lot of palpitations. And of course, I'd never had them before, and I knew I wasn't anxious, so I thought, well, this must be a terrible sign. I'm having some kind of heart problem, and obviously it's going to mean impending death for me. Of course, I was scared. These negative thoughts just made me feel terrible. I went to the doctors, had the echocardiogram, had the 24-hour Holter that I needed to wear, and it ruled out anything serious. Which felt like such a relief. But the difference was then, I still get the palpitations, but now that I know it's not something serious, I'm just much more relaxed about it, and I don't notice the palpitations as much now, even though I'm still having them. So the way you think about things makes a huge difference. I believe your thoughts are the missing link in white coat syndrome. Don't go silent. Don't try and ignore them. Notice them, write them down, and then you can see if they're having an effect on you.